So our next speaker is Amanda Bauer. I think she is with us. Oh, hello. How are you,
Hello.
Amanda? Welcome. Let's just wait for 1 minute so people to relax, and then we'll come back just in 1 minute. So we'll start at exactly, well, 11 my time, which is 10 your UTC.
Okay to ask a question?
Okay, welcome back again to all participants in this conference, GEO 2020 conference. Our next speaker is Amanda Bauer, who is an American professional astronomer and science communicator, currently based in Tucson, Arizona, working as head of education and public outreach at the Vera C Rubin Observatory, and she'll be talking to us about this observatory and the modern approach to interactive classroom investigations. From 2013 to 2016, Amanda was a research astronomer at the Australian Astronomical Observatory, AO. By the way, we have here in Morocco an observatory we call Al Akhawain Astronomical Observatory, and it also the same short name, AO. We'll be presenting this on Monday. Well, it's just a small observatory, but it's a coincidence. Amanda's principal field of research concerns how galaxies form, how they create new stars, and particularly why they suddenly stop creating new stars. She's better known to the public through her efforts in outreach and education. So welcome, Amanda, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks everyone for joining. I've been looking forward to talking with you today. I will go ahead and share my screen. Here you go. Okay, can you confirm that you can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so as was said, I'm at the Vera C Rubin Observatory. This is a telescope that's currently under construction. I wear a couple hats here. I'm the head of the Education and Public Outreach Group, and I'm also the interim deputy director of Rubin Observatory when it transitions into its operations phase. So today what I'd like to do is give you an overview of the observatory itself, in case people haven't heard of it before, the Education and Public Outreach program itself. I will then specifically talk about the education or the formal education program and what educators can be expected to find in the next couple years. And one of the key things within those educational activities are these interactive widgets. So they're web applications that allow people to interact with astronomical data in order to achieve the reasoning behind how we come to some of the major astronomical conclusions that we've come to, like there are objects in the solar system outside of just the major planets, and that the universe is expanding. So it's a really exciting opportunity that we're building, and then we'll save some time for questions at the end. Many of you might have heard of this telescope in its previous incarnation, which was LSST. It was called the Large Synoptic Survey Telescope, but we got renamed in January of this year after Vera C Rubin Observatory. And I'm completely honored to be named after the woman who brought dark matter to light. She was really quintessential in taking observations that led us to believe that galaxies live inside of dark matter halos. And not only did it set the basis for what my research did, I actually spoke with her at one of my first professional astronomy meetings, and it really empowered me to believe that I could go on in this field and have a career at it. So I'm just honored, and I wanted to highlight her role in having a major observatory named after her. So the Rubin Observatory will now produce, we kept the LSST acronym, so it will produce the legacy survey of space and time during its 10 years of observations. And just a little bit of a public service announcement, we really want to refer to this organization as Rubin Observatory so as not to hide behind an acronym, so please don't use VRO. We really want to honor Vera Rubin and her role in astronomy. So we're using Rubin Observatory, or just Rubin for short. And we're working on a new logo. With a new name comes a new logo, so that's an exciting aspect of what we're doing right now. To give you a quick visual background of what LSST, or what Rubin Observatory is, I've got a link here at the bottom for you to be able to go to this video, and I'd like to show it to you now. It's about a 2-minute video, and it's a really beautiful representation of what the observatory will do.
The night sky, our window to the universe beyond. Immense, mysterious, powerful, quietly beautiful. Cosmic events at the edge of our imagination unfold in the darkness, ready to be discovered. When we look at the night sky, we see into the past. Untold stories carried through space by light, the great historian of the cosmos. Technology has evolved over centuries, allowing us to look farther, to the edge of our horizon. We invented telescopes to explore and cameras to capture these traveling messages. Yet the changing cosmos remains unseen. A new telescope opens its eye and captures it all. The objects that move and those that flash, even those we cannot see with our eyes. Every few nights it covers the sky, finding all that has changed. And within minutes, new glimmers of activity are carried around the Earth to anyone waiting to explore them. What will you discover that no one has seen before? It's time to find out.
All right, I'll be sure to share that link at the end. To give you a little bit more background, what is Rubin Observatory? It's an 8-meter optical telescope that we're building in Chile right now. It will have the largest digital camera ever built for astronomy, with a field of view that is the size of 40 full moons in a single image. So it's huge. So what this telescope is going to do is look at the entire southern sky and cover the whole thing every few nights. And so in its total 10 years of observations, it'll take 1,000 pictures of every area in the southern sky. You can imagine they're very deep. And we can also look at the differences between the images every few nights and see things that are changing in a way that we've never been able to monitor it before. So it's really exciting and as far as what it can produce for science. The image quality, this is a Sloan Digital Sky Survey image of the cosmos field. And on the right, you see what the Rubin Observatory will produce over the entire southern sky. This image itself was taken with the Subaru telescope in Hawaii, but then it was processed with Rubin software. Where are we now? I love to show this photo. This is we're constantly sending bits and pieces down to Chile. This is the coating chamber that would put the coat, the reflective coating onto the mirror, and it moves from La Serena on the coast to the mountain of Cerro Pachón early in the morning. And there's one tunnel that it has to go through. And you can see at the bottom right just how close it comes to the edge of the tunnel, so you can understand the limit on how big things are that can go up to the top of the mountain. And so at the moment, we are under construction. We are currently scheduled scheduled to start our survey operations in 2022. This image shows the top telescope in the middle. That's Rubin Observatory right there. And what's going up the road right now is the primary mirror. So that 8.4 meter mirror, this is on its journey up the mountain. So of course, everything's closed down right now. We're not actually doing construction on the mountain in Chile thanks to the pandemic. So it's likely that that date might change, but I can't tell you exactly how much, maybe 6 months, maybe a year. We'll just have to wait and see. So one of the most unique things about Rubin is that it has dedicated a substantial effort during its construction to not only construct the facility, but also an education and public outreach program. So by the time that we start operations, we will have developed a well thought through and unique educational program. This is our current team. We are a mix of astronomers, writers, designers, educators, developers, all working together to build these interactive, data-driven online experiences for students and the general public. We are hiring right now, so if you go to lsst.org, it's our website, you can see a couple positions that we're advertising. So our team, the Education and Public Outreach team's mission is to offer accessible and engaging online experiences that provide non-specialist access to, and importantly, context for the LSST data so that anyone can explore the universe and be part of the discovery process. And so how are we actually doing that? Well, we're building things that are accessible. They're specifically for the general public. A lot of things that exist now that allow access to real data are just providing professional research tools and expecting people to know how to do it, which is not which can be really frustrating for folks. So what we're really trying to do is produce these widgets that I'm going to show you later on in the talk that are intuitive. They're interactions directly with the data in a way that you're used to interacting with things. Imagine changing filters on Instagram as an interaction that you're familiar with, as opposed to using a database and searching through data. That's not a common thing that people do every day. We're making these things interesting. We're really providing narratives about the people that are involved. We try to approach these questions about the universe in a way that taps into your experience of your lived life. And that really makes it relevant and makes you think about it in a different way. It makes it so it's not this thing over here that's science, but it's something that kind of relates to the way that I live my life. We're making these things engaging, so encouraging discovery of new ideas, interactions. People can use citizen science projects, images, they can share things on social media. Everything that we're building, it's an online program, so everything that we're building is accessible through a handheld device. It's accessible through tablets, through Chromebooks. We're building in a way that is capable of reaching a large audience, in the sense that even though you can approach it on your cell phone or you can access it, we can't burden bandwidth. We know that teachers in their classroom have firewalls. They can't download software, they can't download data. So we're making sure that that is a critical part of the development. We can have you operate these things in a Chromebook. Even if you have a very weak internet connection, you'll be able to access the things that we're building, and we'll do them at scale. So not only can 1,000 teachers in the US use these at the same time, people anywhere in the world can access them. And we're also working on basic accessibility criteria across the web. So for screen readers, the kinds of navigation that we're using, the colors, all those kinds of things we're taking into account as we do this development. How are we doing this? What does our program look like? We have a formal education program, which I'll talk about quite a bit the rest of this talk, which is a suite of classroom investigations that enable students to work with real LSST data and also provide support materials and professional development for educators. We're building a website that's got all kinds of these interactive tools on it. We'll have citizen science infrastructure so that people who want to create a citizen science project with any of the 40 billion objects that Rubin is going to be observing, you can create those citizen science projects through this infrastructure that we're building. Or you could just participate as a citizen scientist in probably upwards of 100 projects that would likely be created with this data set. And then we'll also be providing a multimedia gallery with planetarium videos, graphics, regular format videos, and these will all be free for anyone to use. Now, these interactive widgets, they are really interesting and unique to this program. Over the last year, the team has been really building a whole suite of these browser-based tools for interactively working with the data. They allow users to investigate relationships between images, between data points, but you don't have to know any coding. You can create your own color astronomical images. You can visualize 3D structures in the universe and a few other things as well. Our intention here is that these widgets are working independently, so they can be embedded throughout the site, and you can share them on social media. It tries to transform a passive experience like reading an article into an interactive one where you can explore the data yourself and maybe use the actual data that came to a scientific conclusion to work your way to that conclusion. And so you can imagine maybe a press release won't just have an image or a video, but you could actually embed this kind of thing to show you, allow you to intuitively interact with the data and come to some of the same conclusions that they did for the science. Currently, the tools have been built in a way that they have a specific use case inside of our formal education investigations. So these investigations are what I'd like to talk about now. They are designed for students from about 11 through college introductory courses. So in the US, that's about middle school through college introductory astronomy courses. And the key thing is that you as an educator or as a student or as a user, you don't have to download anything. You go to a website and you can do all the interaction there. And we have provided a system that does all the work for you. So this is usable on Chromebooks. You can see here a list of the main topics that we're covering with this suite of investigations. The goals of the education program are really to bring Rubin Observatory data into the classroom in a way that's feasible. Provide engaging and accessible investigations that educators can use all for free, to support learners, so students with diverse backgrounds and abilities. And we really wanted to design these for the reality of a classroom. So the time that educators have, the resources, things that tap into the curriculum that they're usually required to access for earth sciences and physics and astronomy. And as Rosa mentioned in the previous talk, you can really find a way to make these kinds of concepts applicable to anything that might be in your curriculum. We've also created a real depth of support materials, which I'll talk about, and also professional development for these activities. So the investigation design itself, we really want it to be engaging for the students so they don't have to learn how to use it. All of these will be built in English and Spanish. We want them to look good. We want them to be teacher friendly. So we are developing with educators and we're testing with educators. So right now we're in a user testing phase where we work with educators and students and have them go through the activity and then give us feedback so we can improve it as we go along. Our next phase of testing will be to have educators use them in their classroom without us with them. Part of the strength here, I think, is that these are resources that you don't have to have a professional astronomer in the classroom with you to use. We also, specifically for these investigations, because we're funded by the US federal government, we have designed support materials for educators that tie directly into the next generation science standards that are prevalent in the US and required for many teachers. And we'll also have the Spanish language versions that tie into the Curriculum Nacional in Chile. And then low stress technology. So as I mentioned, you just go to a web page and access these and students will be able to submit answers to their teacher. You don't have to have any kind of special software. You don't have to download anything or maintain software. So you don't have to do any of that overhead as the educator or as the student. What we really tried to do is think through the process of what is possible on the modern web, what we heard educators tell us that they needed, that they had versus what wasn't available to them. And we listened to kind of lots of different ages of students that educators had. And then we tried to think through what is the strength of what the Rubin Observatory is going to produce and try to find something that kind of meshed in the middle to really maximize what we could provide. I highlight here Artis Harold, who is our team's education specialist, who has really been the one to work through the instructional design and really architect this entire program. So we want the students to interact with the Rubin data. We want them to make procedural decisions, to analyze data on their way to gaining understanding of an astronomical concept while tapping into their own lived experience in the world. Each investigation can be finished in 1 or 2 hours. So we want to make sure that you can complete them in one session or maybe as a lab assignment overnight. Investigations they include representations and questions and tasks that address students' comprehension and reasoning difficulties. And each investigation is designed with a progression of concepts and tasks. So you start with some kind of inspirational, motivational piece, and then you build up your knowledge to get to the big ideas that are in the investigation, like the universe is expanding or something like that. And each investigation should be accessible by a diversity of learners. So if you're visual, if you write things down, the different types of ways that people learn, there are different options throughout the course of these investigations. What does an investigation actually have with it? These are some screenshots of different activities within different investigations. You can see here you're selecting a cluster of stars, and then it automatically populates this HR diagram, and then each of the positions are color-coded. This is one where we're talking about the colors of light and what a filter actually does. This activity allows students to select different filters to different images and then create their own color image, either what they're familiar with from looking at Hubble images, or they can create their own kind of psychedelic image. It's a really neat web-based way to create astronomical images. On the right, you can see the early prototype designs for this web page. So each investigation, the investigation itself is the thing that the student looks at. The student sees this one website, and it's a 1 to 2 hour activity. Behind that, the teacher has access to an entire teacher guide with assessment materials, materials that support the standards in Chile and the US that I mentioned. There's hooks and phenomenon, which are kind of specific jargon for the US standards. They live on a website. Students can download all of this, the results of their investigations, and submit them to the teachers. And there's also a suite of professional development activities for the teacher, not only to have experience with the astronomy material, but also get to know the interfaces that we're presenting these in. So these are the topics of the investigations that we've developed so far. And so now I'm gonna just kind of hopefully go through a live demo with you. What I've done to create this is in each of these investigations, there are individual components, widgets, that allow students to interact with the particular kind of data that they need to in that investigation. So what I've done is I've pulled out a few widgets from a sampling of these investigations to show you what an interaction might look like. And I'll say these are in draft form, so these are definitely not refined. They don't have our official design language applied to them. So with those caveats, they're still really fun to play around with. So here's one. This is an investigation that looks at the Hubble Plot. It talks about the expanding universe, and I'm trying to get the Zoom thing out of the way so I can access this. So on the right, what you get to do is pick a galaxy, and you can click through different images. Remember, I said the telescope will be observing the same part of the sky many, many times. And so this would be one part of the sky, there's a galaxy, and you can see as you flip through these images, or you can just let it play, that a supernova has exploded in these images. So you hover over it, or if you've got a tablet, you'll be able to click it with your finger, and then you try to identify what the galaxy is. So here's your fuzzy galaxy, and then it pops out this plot. So it automatically calculates, if you see this within the context of the whole investigation, it tells you how you calculate these things, but for the purposes of this widget, it calculates the galaxy velocity and the supernova distance, and then you are able to figure out how to place that point on this plot. So let's see, we've got 100 and about 9,000, so somewhere over here. And then you go to the next galaxy. So we ask you to do this for some handful of galaxies. They give you a little sign, hey, you got it. And so I'll just go through and quickly place these on here, probably not very accurately. Oh, I missed it. There we go. got at that time. And so we'll ask the students to go through and place some number, just to get an idea of how do you go from the image, the actual thing that the telescope takes, to some graph where you can then make some conclusion and get some information out of it. Okay, so I'm going to save these answers and I'm going to say, let's go to the next part of the activity. And so now we've got this Hubble plot, and what the students get to do is fit a trend line in here. So they can make this fit. You can imagine at this point, we can either do it with the student's unique sample of data, or we can say, hey, here's 30 million, or probably not that many with supernova, but here's several thousand observations that the Rubin Observatory has made. And so you see many more data points plotted on here, and then they can try to fit this line to it. And the result is a slope, which is the Hubble's constant. And so you go on to see what types of conclusions you can make with this value of the Hubble's constant. So this activity moves into thinking about where we are in the universe. We've made all these observations from our position in the Milky Way. Is it the case that if you were in some other galaxy somewhere else in the universe, would you see the same thing? And so it allows you to kind of go through, and what if you were at a different galaxy and you were making these observations and you find that the points all line up along this Hubble plot, and then you can see this 3D distribution of where the galaxies are in the universe. And that's fully interactive. And again, here we can plot any number of galaxy points that Rubin would have observed on this plot and on here, just so you can see where you are in the universe and how does that matter in the distribution of matter really in space. Here's one that deals with light curves. So since we are looking at objects over and over, we're going to get quite a bit of time domain information of these objects. So this is a similar interaction than we had with another investigation. You click and identify your supernova, and then you can see here that it goes through each image has a brightness measurement. And so you can go through and see the light curve. You can stop on any of them, and you can flip through and see which point corresponds to which image over here on the left. And then you can do all kinds of things once you have a light curve. So in this particular activity, we're asking students to identify the type of supernova. Now there are lots and lots of tiny categories of supernova that astronomers have identified. We simplify it a little bit and just say, here's light curves of type 1a supernova. And you can move it around here. We ask the students to try to do their best to fit the shape and the height, and ask if this is a type 2p or type 1a supernova based on this currently very elemental type of fitting. And then once you figure that out for the type 1a in particular, the next part of the activity is you find what the peak of this is, and then you can determine how far away the supernova is. And so you have the ability to go in and change your answer, you save your answer. At the end of the full investigation, at the moment, the way it works is that the student is able to print out a representation of all the plots that they made, so you know what their unique data sets are and all the answers that they came up with, and then they can submit those to their teacher. We've got several activities that have to do with the solar system. So this is one where you can identify the object moving through the sky. So it moves relative to the static nature of the other objects, and we will have lots of different observations of that. And then this is, we're kind of calling our orbit viewer tool at the moment. So this is a way where you can get some information about the orbit of various objects. We will, with Rubin Observatory, detect many times more objects in the solar system than we know that exist right now. I can't tell you if it's how many times more, I forget the number right now. So part of this investigation is really highlighting how do you take observations and figure out orbits, and then isolate like new populations of objects, like what are the Trojan asteroids that orbit around Jupiter. And so here, these things are moving along their orbits. So this is the Sun, Earth, Jupiter, and then this object that you're looking at in this particular investigation. You can speed up the playback because that was pretty slow. Now we can see them moving. You can get a little faster. You can move around. You can zoom in and out. You can even playback so it goes quite quickly. So you're looking at things like the eccentricity of this orbit and how close it comes to the sun to try to determine what sort of family of object it is. You can even play it at actual speed. So if you've got a couple years to hang out, you could see some movement. And then it gets a little bit more complicated. So we've got more objects in the sky, and we can still use this type of tooling to zoom things around. We can zoom in, we can speed this up, and then we can really start to see things moving around. You can go out, you can go in. So again, I'll highlight that these are really early prototypes that haven't been fully designed out yet by our graphic designer, but it's just to really test some of the functionality and to put these in front of students and to put them in front of educators to see how they would use them in the classroom and how we can improve them. I think that was the fastest one. And then the last one I think I have to show you in this little demo, if it loads. So this is looking at the distribution of galaxies across space. And the main point is that when you go to a high redshift bin, got a little hamburger menu here, you can go down, you see a much more even distribution of galaxies across the sky. And then when you go to lower and lower redshift, you see that things have clustered a lot more. And so this investigation goes through the large scale structure in the universe. And I can't wait to see this when we actually have Rubin Observatory data on it. So here's your end. You answered all the questions, fabulous. And I will go back to where my presentation is. There it is. Oh, live demos, fingers crossed, it worked. This is an image of the stellar eclipse that happened down over Cerro Pachon last year. A little over a year now, I guess.
Thank you, Amanda. It's really nice, nice work. Nice. I liked the widgets. They're fabulous. Thanks. Actually, it's inspiring. I would like actually to go and try them. Do you have websites to go? Can you just share that with?
I have a couple more pieces of information for you, and then I'll mention that. So, sure. Just to give you a timeline. We do have working widgets. I can actually give people the link to what I just showed you. That was kind of a demo that we put together quickly, and it should be live for another 6 months or so. We are getting into fiscal year 2021, so that's where we're continuing to do our user testing. We're still doing our first level of development on the 8 investigations, and then we're going to be beginning pilot testing, which is when we let educators go off and use them in their classrooms and give us detailed feedback. And then we'll start doing professional development about 2022, and then we hope to make these completely public, probably in a phased way in 2023, really in the time that we start to get observations from the actual telescope. Right now, all the data that was in there were from Precursor and other surveys since our telescope is still under construction. So we'll have to stay tuned for that. So if you have ideas or questions, or you're interested in trying to run some of these pilot tests, we would love to hear from you. You can reach out at this email address. We are hiring. We're looking to the future out of the dome, currently under construction. And I'll post, I think I have 2 or 3 other links that I can post into the chat while I take some questions now.
I was saying, can I ask a question? It's Carl.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Carl.
It's super. Hey, I had this, the HOU community, I know it might be in contradiction to the philosophy I learned from artists, but I mean, maybe we could develop it on our own, but get 100, maybe a cone search tool, like 100 by 100 pixels back through time. I think it would be a 0, it wouldn't weigh down your bandwidth at all, but I think could be very useful for some of the current HOU software we have developed, activities, materials, etc. Is that within the realm of feasibility?
Well, I mean, it's certainly the case that we will probably provide some amount of data. We're kind of limited to the total amount of data that we can release to the public. EPO can release some fraction of the Rubin data. As a data rights holder, you can go in to the science platform that the astronomers use and get anything that you want, frankly. But yeah, let's talk about that a little bit more, so I know really what it is that you're trying to do, and see if we can.
Oh, thank you. But I mean, everything you've done is just beautiful. And I view it, it will be used by many teachers, many HOU teachers. Are the widgets accessible by non-US people?
Yeah, once they're up and running, they're accessible internationally. They should be translatable based on kind of what your browser is able to do. We will provide everything specifically in English and Spanish. And then there's a whole section of the support materials that are very specific to the US and Chilean curriculum, but the widgets, or the activities themselves, anybody can access.
Great. I've been talking about LSST every HOU conference for 10 years. Now it's nice to see it close.
Yeah, it's nice to finally, over the last year, we've really done a lot of work actually developing these demos. So it's nice to finally have something to show in addition to just telling you what we're going to do.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Carl. I have a question from Jacob Brown. He said that these look great. I think the widgets. How do we sign up our students to help with testing and such? A couple of days.
So that email that I posted, education@lsst.org, is probably the place to start getting in touch with us. We sort of are doing our testing in waves, and so as soon as we're ready for the next wave, we'll be looking to the folks who have contacted us through there. We do have a forum available right now, so when you send that email, you can just let us know that you're interested in getting regular updates, and we'll sign you up for that forum.
Yeah, there's another question from Azim Khan. He's saying, what will be the technologies and instruments that will be there in Rubin Observatory? And could you elaborate your work on dark matter?
Yeah. So the Rubin Observatory itself will have one main camera, and that camera has 6 filters on it. So it's U, G, R, I, Z, and Y. And so for the first 10 years of the program, it just goes back and forth between those 6 filters and observes the sky. The fact that it has such a huge area on the sky and it covers it so quickly is really the major benefit that this program is going to produce. So every night when you take an image, there will be some kind of template that we had produced before, and you can subtract those images so you can see anything that has changed or moved or gotten brighter or gotten fainter or appeared or disappeared. And within a few minutes of that image coming off the telescope, we'll send out an alert. And so other people around the world can receive those alerts and know if something has gone that they're interested in, and they can do follow-up observations or just, whatever types of objects, supernova or solar system objects or whatever you might be interested in. That's something that's really unique that this program will be doing. So it's just that one camera over the first 10 years, and then who knows what we're going to be doing in the next 10 years after that. It's quite a bit of future planning.
Yeah, impressive. Azim Khan is also inquiring about the database organized. Is it as NCBI have done for biological data? I don't know what is NCBI, maybe you know.
I don't know what NCBI is. The way that the Rubin data will be available to astronomers will be through something called the Rubin Science Platform. And so you access that. They'll have one part of this where you can just kind of zoom around the images themselves. They'll have a Jupyter notebook aspect where you can use Python or R within the Jupyter notebook. The idea is that you can go in to do your computations there in the cloud, in the system itself, as opposed to downloading data on your machine. There's going to be more data produced a night with Rubin than what exists on the internet right now. So the amounts of data, like 40 billion objects in the final, it's just amazing. So what we're trying to do is figure out ways that you can, with modern technology, take your code to the data and calculate it, as opposed to bringing the data to you and having to do it on your local machines. For the EPO program in particular, we are building an EPO data center that's cloud-based so that we can account for different usage. Like maybe we have a citizen science project that the Zooniverse happens to get hit pretty hard. It's featured on BBC or whatever, and we get 500,000 users at once. So we have to be able to be responsive to that and make sure that the system doesn't collapse for any educators that happen to be using it at the same time that we get that other burst of people. So we're building our database cloud-based. It's kind of under construction right now, so I can't give you any more details than that. And also I'm not a backend developer, so.
Yeah. Another question or request from Daniel, teacher from Chile, physics teacher. Would you like to do some workshop or face-to-face activities for teachers at Chile?
Yeah, we'd really love to. So we have a member on our team who's based in Chile. And as soon as I would say probably about a year from now is when these activities will all be in Spanish and we'll be ready. We've been at some of the summer schools in Chile the last couple years that happen in January to present this material. So I imagine we'll be doing a lot more face-to-face work and professional development in the next few years. So please send us an email at that message, at the email that I posted, so we can let you know.
Yeah. A request also from Doug Miller. He's I'd like to talk with you more about getting involved with cosmic adventures through Orange Country Astronomers. It's a ready to go citizen science group. So he's putting his email there, so maybe you could talk to him in private.
Okay, great.
This is it for the questions that I have from the audience. Any other questions from the colleagues on the panel?
Yes, can I ask a question, Hassan?
Yeah, sure, Gustavo, go ahead.
Yes. Hello, Amanda. Thank you for your presentation. I'm certain that the observatory will make a huge impact on astronomy. And I'm sorry, but I missed just the start of the Q&A. Someone asked you about the impact of the constellation satellites on the project?
No, no one did.
Do you want to talk about it? Because I know it's a very polemical subject.
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, there's no astronomical facility that's going to be able to escape some level of impact from these satellites in the next 5 to 10 years. We've actually just produced a report that was the result of a workshop that happened a couple months ago that was sponsored by the AAS in the US and the National Science Foundation. So I think that's full report is going to be coming out in the next couple weeks. Can't remember exactly when. For Rubin specifically, it affects us in the early parts of the evening and the early parts of twilight. You can imagine as the satellites are being reflected the most. So there are ways that some members of our collaboration are currently working with some of the groups with SpaceX to try to do things like use a less reflective paint on the satellites themselves. And then within the data, what happens is that there's a big, huge, bright, saturated trail that goes across the image. And it's a high fraction of images that would actually have that on it. And it actually, there's what's called crosstalk. So if it bleeds, then the parts of the CCD that are reading out the information cause other trails. So they're sort of ghost trails. And so what we're trying to do now is twofold in as far as mitigations. One is try to figure out how we can predict as best we can where a big satellite cluster might be, so we can either avoid that part of the sky or just close the shutter for some amount of time around that crossing. And then there's also the software mitigation of trying to get rid of some of those streaks. And so that's not 100% effective, but it can be quite effective. It just is going to take quite a bit of effort on the software side.
Yes, but if I may ask another question, it seems to me that there was not very much discussion before this constellation started to be launched. And it seems that the astronomical community was not even considered by the other parties involved. So this brings my question that if this is a failure on the astronomical community on the communication side to at least the people can consider that this issue is relevant and there's taxpayers' money involved in the facilities that are going to be wasted because the other parties involved and the regulatory agencies, if there are any, did not took this into account?
Well, I'm not really willing to lay any blame on anyone. I mean, I'm not sure who the first astronomers might have been who have heard about this or were in communication. I mean, they're mostly private companies, so there's not any official government regulation or body that they have to report such things to at the moment, which is a bit unfortunate. But I know that we as an astronomy community are working as closely with those organizations as we can to try to take actions to co-mitigate the risk in the end.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Hassan, do you have more questions? Because we might have time for a break.
No, actually, we don't have any other questions. Thanks a lot, Amanda. It was a really very interesting talk. I'm looking forward actually to work with my students on using your widgets.
Yeah,
Okay.